Here's my audience for my speech today. Yeah, we can get started. Have you ever noticed the lingering smell of food in the kitchen even after it's been cleaned? Or ate dinner and tasted something that was not even incorporated into the meal? That is probably because you've been using a wooden cutting board. Hello, my name is Emma Martinez, and today I'm here to persuade the students of COMM 10 and my physical audience about why you shouldn't use a wooden cutting board. You should listen to my speech because it may help to better your health in a way and just make your everyday lives a little bit easier. There are 3 reasons why you shouldn't be using a wooden cutting board. The first one is that they hold a lot of bacteria and retain smell. The second is that they are very high maintenance products. And 2 is that they are just really heavy and bulky. So my first reason to throw out your wooden cutting board is because they retain bacteria and smell very well. According to Chef's Vision, wood is very porous. This is known as open grain, and that's a problem because food and liquids can get stuck in and seep into the wood, which can cause bacteria growth. This can cause lots of mold to form and other just really unpleasant things to form inside the wood, which ultimately ruins the board and then can also cause you to become very ill. The same website also mentions that certain woods should not be used for cutting boards, such as pistachio and walnut. Nut allergies are very common, and using that can trigger reactions. And that's also the same for pine wood. It can trigger allergic reactions as well, but also it can leave a very resiny taste in your food, which just isn't good, and nobody wants that. As I mentioned before, mold can form from these types of things and seep into it, which is just going to cause lots of bad smells, which actually leads me into my next point. So my second reason to burn your cutting board is because it needs more maintenance than a plastic one. Soap and water isn't always going to cut it when trying to get the smell and bad stuff out of the board. So the wood cutting board store gives a few ways that you could get those smells out. For example, you can use lemon and salt, baking soda, or even vinegar. But this is just an extra maintenance step that isn't really required for plastic boards. You could just throw them into the dishwasher and kind of call it a day. Wood cutting boards also need to be oiled every so often, which again is just an extra unnecessary step that plastic ones do not need. The website Bon Appetit actually explains this process, which isn't too bad, but it is very lengthy and a lot of people just don't have time for it. First, you have to wash your cutting board, and then you have to let it dry for so many hours until it's completely dry. A lot of people will just let them do this overnight. Again, not a lot of people have time for this, and a lot of people only have one cutting board, one wooden one. After that, then you can oil it, which takes about 2 minutes, but like I said, the drying process takes just way too much time, and it's unnecessary. Wooden cutting boards also cannot go into the dishwasher. I mentioned that plastic ones can, which is very convenient. Wooden ones cannot, though, because the very high heat can make it warp and crack, and then it's no good. You have to throw it out, get a new one. I actually have an example of a wooden cutting board. It hasn't necessarily been in a dishwasher, but it is very old, and it's splitting where the different pieces of wood connect and has lots of gashes in it from just being used so much. So my third reason to bury your wooden cutting board in your backyard is because they're very bulky and heavy, like the one I just showed you. Serious Eats mentions that wooden cutting boards are usually heavier than plastic ones, which can make it very difficult to move them around, especially for older people. And this can also make them harder to clean because they're so heavy, and since they can't be just thrown in a dishwasher, you have to move them around in the sink, and it's just kind of hard to do. They are also not good for very clumsy people. If you are anything like me, wooden cutting boards, they don't really move too much because they're heavy, but if you're transporting it and that falls, you are probably going to break your foot. And if you do not break your foot, you are definitely breaking your toes because they're around 5 to 6 pounds. So in conclusion, I have just finished discussing why wooden cutting boards should not be used because they trap bacteria, smell, are very high maintenance, and are heavy. But just because you shouldn't be using wooden cutting boards for food purposes, you can buy them for decoration and stuff, and they do make really nice decorations and stuff, especially if you get one that's like acacia wood or something. So if I have convinced you not to use wooden cutting boards, you can go on Amazon.com actually and buy sets of plastic ones, which are actually a lot better to use. There are different types of plastic ones you can buy. These ones I purchased like a month ago. And these ones are actually color-coded and have different foods on them. This one is poultry, for example, and stuff. We got fish at the back, and then we have ones in the middle for like fruits and vegetables. Because with cutting boards, you're supposed to actually use different cutting boards for different foods. You shouldn't cut fruits and vegetables on something used for poultry because of salmonella and cross-contamination. Anybody who knows anything about food prep, just anything in the food world, that cross-contamination and using the same board for everything is a huge no-no. So I hope you enjoyed my speech, and thank you for your time.